I'm Osman-Rani, CEO and co-founder of Naluri. We are a digital health technology company that provides behavioral coaching and psychological support for those at risk of chronic conditions like diabetes, heart diseases, and cancer, and depression, anxiety, and stress. As a digital company that uses a lot of quantitative data, we've seen spikes of 40 to 50% in levels of stress, anxiety, and depression this year with COVID-19 from our clients, arising from the massive uncertainties, economic and financial hardships, and disruptions in our work and lifestyle routines. Now, we're told we need to develop mental resilience to equip ourselves to handle these pressures and uncertainties and reduce the likelihood of falling into crippling depression or anxiety. My goal today is to give you some actionable tips to do so as you plan ahead for 2021. And if there's anything we learned from 2020, is that things will not nicely go according to our plan. And when things don't go according to plan and we're hit with unexpected setbacks, there are usually two things that hold us back. First, we're all oriented to stick to what we're familiar and comfortable. Doing something new makes us uneasy. It's risky and unproven, and there's more downside than upside. And if we've had past successes doing things one way, it becomes harder to change to a different approach. And second, we want others to change. We think our boss or our client is wrong, and they should change because we believe we are right. But facts don't win arguments, and expecting others to change means we surrender our fate, our happiness, our peace of mind to someone else. And since they're not likely to change, we wallow in our own misery, our frustration and resentment that eats away inside of us. As an entrepreneur over the last 15 years, I faced many unexpected setbacks. I remember the 1997-98 Asian financial crisis, and then again starting an airline in 2008 and facing the brunt of the global financial crisis where all the banks that had committed to provide aircraft financing to us all pulled out. In that same year, oil prices went crazy. It had been in the range of $50 to $75 from 2002 to 2007, and that's what our business plan was based on. But in the first 6 months of 2008, it doubled to $147. Now, oil is 50% of our airline's cost, and no plan could have anticipated this shock. On top of that, all the banks advised airlines to hedge their fuel as a way to mitigate the risk of oil price volatility, and many airlines did, including us. When we started to lock the price of oil at about $100 a barrel, we were relieved that when it peaked at $147 in June. But you know what? 6 months later, by December, it collapsed all the way down to $32 a barrel. Now, when we had locked the price of oil at $100 a barrel for a whole year, it caused 50 airlines around the world to go bankrupt. And we narrowly avoided that fate ourselves because the one bank that was the counterparty to our hedging contract, they went bankrupt first. What a narrow escape. And every year after that, there was one shock after the other. In 2010, there was the Icelandic volcanic eruption that closed down the entire European airspace for a week, leaving thousands of passengers stranded in London and Kuala Lumpur. The next year, we started flights to Tokyo and got hit by the Tohoku earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear tragedy. The following year, just when we started flights to Christchurch, New Zealand, the city got hit by 2 earthquakes and we had to pull out of that market. And it wasn't just natural disasters. Every year we had to deal with a difficult policy or regulatory environment with restrictions being imposed on us to limit competition with national airlines. 2014, though, was a particularly challenging year for me because as an industry, we had to deal with 3 airline crashes. MH370 in March, MH17 in July, and QZ8501 in December. And tragedies can leave a permanent scar in our mental and emotional well-being. Even in my personal life, nothing goes according to plan. In May 2018, while I was cycling in Kuala Lumpur, a car came from behind at very fast speeds and hit me hard, leaving me unconscious. I woke up in the intensive care unit in the hospital with fractures on my skull, bleeding in my brain, 3 vertebrae in my spine fractured, 3 of my 4 limbs were in a cast, and a broken shoulder that required painful surgery. Sometimes life knocks you down hard, and in this case, literally knocked down hard. As I lay in that hospital bed, I was overwhelmed with emotion, fear, anxiety, depression. What was going to happen to me? Will I be able to lead a normal life again? What was going to happen to the new business that I had just started? How will I provide for my family? And this accident happened just a few weeks after my wife was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and she had to postpone her thyroidectomy surgery to deal with my situation. So you can imagine the psychological trauma our family endured. All of us go through these negative emotions when we face setbacks or failures. And I realized there was no way I could find answers to these big questions. When things are overwhelming, I needed to focus on the smallest things that I could do that were within my control and put aside the worries of those bigger questions. So with the support from my family and hospital staff, I had to take control. I focused on learning how to sit up from my bed and start to walk again. And so on the 7th day after the accident, I started to take my first steps in the ward, even when one of my legs was still fractured, and as you can see, my vision was still disoriented. But this gave me momentum. I celebrated these small wins and keep focusing on what I can do rather than worry about things that were out of my control. I deliberately stopped thinking about the driver that hit me and told people who asked what happened to him that I did not want to know. And I wasn't angry at him because I wanted to focus all my energy to heal and get stronger and not waste it feeling angry at someone else. With momentum, I could start walking on the treadmill from day 33 and slowly increase the time from just 5 minutes a day to 10 to 15 to 30 minutes. And here I want to share how we use behavior goals rather than outcome goals as a way to succeed. Many people focus on outcome goals, especially New Year resolutions. That's why 80% of New Year's resolutions die by February. From wanting to lose 10 kilos of weight or save enough for a down payment for a house or to get a promotion. Instead, success is higher if we focus on behavior actions that we do daily and weekly. And by day 47, I could pick up the pace and start to run on the treadmill. Now, another tip on goal setting is to frame our behavior goals as action goals rather than avoidance goals. Actions are things that we do daily, like going for a walk or run or writing in a journal or drinking 8 glasses of water, rather than an avoidance goal, like avoid social media or avoid Netflix or avoid nasi lemak. Because when we focus on negative goals, the brain only remembers nasi lemak and doesn't register avoid. So in my recovery journey, the joy came 2 months after that accident when I could run outdoors again, that feeling of liberation and elation, like when we were finally able to go outside after the MCO lockdown. But an even bigger joy and a big psychological milestone was to get back on a bicycle, a new bicycle, and ride outdoors again with my friends on day 84, less than 3 months from that accident. I did not want that accident to stop me from doing things that matter to me. Momentum fuels more momentum. With physiotherapy sessions 5 days a week, many of them painful sessions, I worked on gaining my shoulder and arm mobility, and eventually my broken shoulder healed. And day 112, I could get back a full rotation on my arm, and I could start swimming again in the pool. By then, I had a very specific goal in mind. I wanted to get back to Ironman triathlon racing. And so I worked with my coaches and kept working on my strength and stamina and signed up for the Ironman triathlon race in Langkawi, Malaysia that November. Now, this is important for me because being a triathlete is a big part of my identity. So on day 174, less than 6 months from that accident, I was able to complete the Ironman 70.3 Langkawi Triathlon, swimming, cycling, and running. My motivation was I wanted to tell my children, and for the parents out there, you know, our children do not listen to what we tell them. They learn by observing what we do. Same thing with our team members. The message for my children is, life will knock us down hard, very hard, and we can't control what happens to us. But we can decide how we choose to respond. That is why it's important to understand that our initial reactions and impulses to things that happen to us are automatic and may limit us. And that's H, the second resilience element, to build and maintain an optimistic and hopeful outlook, which can be trained. You see, our brains are designed for one primary purpose, to keep us alive, our survival instinct. And the way our brain does this is that it steers us towards things that are familiar, things that are predictable, reliable. It does not like things that are unknown, risky, or dangerous. Our brain receives 50 million sensory inputs every single moment, and yet we can only consciously process 7 or 8. So the brain filters out everything quickly based on these gut instincts. That's why when you meet someone, even before that person has said a single word, our brain has already made a judgment whether you like that person or not. And these quick judgments can be limiting. The brain may tell us we cannot do something because it hasn't seen us succeed before. It tells us to stick to doing the same things over and over again. And anything dangerous or unknown causes us a lot of stress. It's the brain's warning signs. Danger, danger, danger. But my message to you is that stress is necessary. We need stress to perform our best. So we don't want to avoid stress, but we need to learn how to respond to it positively. Stress is a biological response when the brain wants the body to spring into action. If the brain senses danger, for example, if a lion started to chase an antelope in the savannah, the antelope's body is going to experience a surge in stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, to get the heart to beat faster, the lungs to expand, and the muscles primed for action. These hormones also narrow the brain's focus on the immediate threat. It shuts down the digestive system, the reproductive system, and it even slows down the brain's ability to think creatively. It just wants to survive. Now, the lion who's chasing the antelope also needs to experience stress. Those same stress hormones also makes the lion's heart beat faster, its lungs to expand, and the muscles to be primed for action in order to catch the antelope. Because if the lion doesn't catch its prey for several days, it may starve to death. In today's modern world, hopefully none of you have to experience the threat of a lion chasing you. But today's threat may come from our boss being angry at us, our clients being upset. We experience pressure from sales targets, or maybe our spouse is unhappy with us. We experience the same hormonal reactions as if a lion is chasing us. So stress occurs, whether we're the predator or the prey, but we choose how we respond. We can respond as the prey or victim, or we can respond as a predator, ready for action. And the third element of resilience is to learn how to move from reacting impulsively, often out of anger or fear, to responding intentionally with informed actions to that difficult boss, the client, the unhappy spouse, or mounting bills to pay. That is why some people enjoy the thrill of a roller coaster ride or skydiving, while other people are deathly afraid of the same thing, or even public speaking. People who skydive experience the same nervous energy, but they look at it not as something to avoid, but something that they channel into action. We choose how we look at stress. Now, unlike the antelope, when the lion stops chasing it, the antelope can go back to grazing again and all the stress hormones dissipate away. For humans, we have evolved where it's harder for us to let go of the stress feelings once the immediate threats go away. For some of us, even when the threat has not yet emerged, The boss has not yet become angry. The customer is not yet upset. We still have time to achieve our sales targets, or our spouse is not yet unhappy. We can anticipate that it might happen, and it already causes these stress hormones to surge. That is anxiety, where we become worried about potential threats that have not yet emerged. And when we worry, these videos keep playing in our heads over and over. For some other people, once the threats have passed, we still can't stop the videos from playing in our head. That is what we call depression. When something has already passed, sometimes long ago, like childhood trauma, the memories keep playing in our heads and we keep feeling depressed. To illustrate what happens to our bodies when we experience prolonged stress, anxiety, and depression, consider this interesting fact. When I complete an Ironman triathlon race in Langkawi, in that one day of swimming, cycling, and running, I burn a staggering 6,000 calories. That's 10 plates of nasi lemak. By the end of the day, I would have lost 2 to 3 kilograms of weight. But a world champion chess grandmaster competing in a world championship chess tournament can also burn 6,000 calories. Now, clearly not from the physical activity of moving chess pieces around, but from the brain working really hard, thinking about multiple chess scenarios, 50 moves ahead. Because our brain represents only 2% of our body's weight, it consumes over 20% of all the calories that we eat. That is why when we're overwhelmed with stress, anxiety, and depression, with all the negative thoughts playing over and over in our heads, we become physically fatigued and tired. And over time, we even become sick with high blood pressure and diabetes and heart diseases. So learning to build resilience and optimism and perseverance requires us to learn how do we control these videos playing in our head of the anxious thoughts of the future or the depressed thoughts of the past. As leaders, it's important for us to be aware of early signs and symptoms of employee burnout that lead to depression and anxiety from prolonged stress and pressure. These include signs of physical fatigue, soreness and muscle tightness, or irregular sleep due to insomnia, not enough sleep, to hypersomnia, too much sleep, because sleep's function is to rejuvenate and maintain our brain health. Appetite changes, either not eating at all or eating too much suddenly, is another indicator. As our mood swings, suddenly becoming short-tempered, quick irritability and outbursts, or having fever and dizziness and sickness, and also disengagement, especially in the work context where people make promises to deliver work that they cannot deliver, or they stop responding to workplace jokes and banters, or stop contributing to team meetings. Now, there are two things that I want to share with you. First is mind wandering. The average person experiences mind wandering 47% of the time when they are awake. That means the brain is thinking of another thought instead of the task that they're supposed to do. For example, when you listen to me on this webinar, half of you may actually be doing something else, like checking your WhatsApp messages or social media news feeds, answering emails, or writing a report. I can see you. And that's one habit that most of us are guilty of, which is simultaneous multitasking. We think we're being productive by doing several things at once, but that is not what is happening. Our brain cannot multitask. It does one thing at a time, and what we're actually doing is jumping from one task to the other every few seconds, right? 7 seconds answering this WhatsApp message, 10 seconds listening to the webinar, 12 seconds writing an email, or 9 seconds talking to someone. And each time we shift from one task to the other, it takes the brain more energy to make that switch. To illustrate this, try doing these two sets of tasks. On the left-hand side, you see our math problems, and on the right-hand side are creative problems, where you have to make a full sentence comprising of 2 words represented by each pair of icons. So, what's 18 times 7? Now move to the right, make a sentence with a fish and a bicycle. Then move to the left, what's 52 plus 19? And back to the right, make a sentence with an apple and an eye. And then back again to the left, what's 46 minus 38? And back to the right, clock and a bird. Studies have shown repeatedly That task shifting, going from left to right and left to right in this case, will take about 20% longer to complete compared to someone doing all the math questions first and then all the creative questions in batches. So for those of you who think you're being productive by having multiple windows and apps on different devices open simultaneously, I'm sorry to say you're being less productive. Now think about the implications for our teams who are not trained to work smartly, or worse, because bosses and managers constantly interrupt them and expect them to shift gears often. Imagine driving a car where you keep accelerating then braking, and turning every few seconds. That wears down the engine very fast and burns more petrol. Driving efficiently is when we drive at a constant speed in one direction and only making turns periodically. So building mental fitness, resilience and optimism, focus and curiosity and social connectedness doesn't happen by just, listening to one webinar. Just like going to the gym. If I brought you to the gym once and we spent 2 hours lifting weights, all you're gonna get are sore muscles and you swear you'll never set foot in the gym again. Strength comes from daily or regular routines and practices, and it applies the same to both physical strength and fitness as well as mental fitness and resilience. So here are some things to share on how we build mental fitness to nurture ourselves, the fourth element on the path to resilience. We've all heard of mindfulness or meditation exercises. These are exercises to train our focus and concentration on what we're doing in the present to minimize those anxious thoughts of the future or those depressive thoughts of the past. Now you might think, I don't have time to add mindfulness exercises in my daily routine because I'm so busy. But you can actually practice mindfulness in your existing daily routines. Spend 25 minutes writing that report and shut down all notifications and put away your phone. When it comes to emails, do it in batches and then close the browser and move on to another task. Even when we have dinner with our families, that's an opportunity. Learn to have dinner by being present with our families instead of trying to simultaneously send WhatsApp messages while we eat or watching TV while we eat. One of the contributors to that 40 to 50% spike in stress and anxiety from work from home arrangements is expectations by managers that their team members need to respond immediately to their WhatsApp messages or emails. Because if I can't see you, I don't trust that you're working. Maybe you're watching Netflix or you're sleeping. So the way I monitor you is to see how fast you respond. Instead, consider alternative ways of running remote teams by defining clearly when you communicate synchronously, for example, during 15-minute daily stand-ups, and moving most communications to asynchronous channels like Slack or project management tools like ClickUp or Monday or Jira or Trello. There's so many. Because there's a real cost to a start-stop attention span of our team members. Now, exercise also plays an important part in getting our body better able to handle stress and pressure. But some exercises are better than others for stress management. What counts is regular exercise, 5 to 6 times a week, even if some days it's only for 10 minutes, rather than doing 2 hours once a week. But also doing it at the right heart rate intensity, not too low and not too intense, about 120 to 140 beats per minute, depending on your age and experience. Because it's at this intensity that works best for the dentate gyrus in our hippocampus of our brain that regulates and stabilizes our moods. Sleep is also crucial for stress management. Remember what I shared earlier about minimizing those anxious thoughts of the future or depressive thoughts of the past? Well, just like developing physically stronger muscles after workout, that happens when you sleep, not right after a gym workout. Same thing with our mental fitness. Because when we sleep, there are these glial cells in our brains that act like a gardener taking out the weeds from the garden. It prunes away those anxious or depressive thoughts that are ruminating in our head. That's why many of us feel so much more clear-headed after a good night's sleep. One final point to add on mental fitness and resilience. Most of us are familiar with stress-induced hormones, cortisol and adrenaline and norepinephrine that get our heart to beat faster, our lungs to expand, and our muscles primed and tense, making our pupils dilate and our vision narrowing. But the body is also sending out another hormone, oxytocin. Oxytocin is also called the love hormone or the cuddle hormone. It helps us build human bonds of connection. It surges through a mother with a newborn baby. Because for thousands of years, humans evolved to deal with threats from the coldest winters, the harshest droughts, when we were attacked by predators or enemies. The way we survived was that we bonded together as a tribe. When we're alone, we are less likely to survive. So human connection is a critical part of building mental fitness and resilience. So a key part of resilience is to already have a support network. Mentors, coaches, and friends that energize us, replenish our spirit, and are there for us without judging us. Not all family members or friends are positive for us. Choosing the right people and nurturing these relationships are important. And in the Path to Resilience e-learning course, we provide frameworks to guide how to proactively nurture our professional and personal network. Now, my colleague, Dr. Tiffany Ong, is championing programs to teach us how can we support our colleagues and create a workplace culture that is more conducive to positive mental well-being and nurtures resilience and optimism, focus and curiosity and connectedness. And as a quick recap of the CARE framework, where C, check for signals. Assess your colleagues based on the symptoms that we discussed earlier. Is there a pattern or is it one-off? Assess yourself. Are you in the right frame of mind to be helpful, and can you deal with someone else's problem? And assess the time and the place to approach someone. A, apply non-judgmental conversation. How do you use 3 important communication skills: attending, reflecting, and affirming? Too often, as bosses and managers, we want to just fix problems, but we're not mental health professionals. And the best way to support our colleagues in distress is to attend to them, just to be there for them. Reflecting means when they do open up, don't be quick to tell them what to do or share your experience. Just repeat back what they say to get their agreement that you understood them. Reflecting shows you are actively and mindfully listening. R is to reassure support with information. Perception is reality. Even if you disagree with your colleague's view, acknowledge that what they're feeling is real and don't dismiss those feelings. Validation is incredibly important, even if it's just nodding when they're opening up to you about their situation. And finally, E is to ensure help is received. How do you know when to escalate and how to escalate when things look serious? There are a lot more things that organizations can do to embed these practices through trainings and awareness building and having various options to provide professional support. With that, I wish you all the best on your path to resilience. Thank you.